Great. So it looks like the majority of you use in-person trainings or one-on-one technical coaching support, which is great because today we're going to explore some of these other things that you haven't selected. And we're going to really dive in and look into microlearning and gamification. So I'm going to hand it over to Miranda.
Awesome. Thanks, Monica. All right. So before we go further with our content for you all, just to kind of get the juices flowing, I know we just are coming off of lunch. So we'd love to invite you all to take a moment here and take a look at the images on the screen. For a little icebreaker, we'd love to hear from you all which image or which animal best matches your learning style. So we'd love for you to use the annotate feature in Zoom. So if you're familiar, on your Zoom toolbar, there's an annotate button. It looks like a small pencil, right either on the bottom or the top of your screen, wherever your toolbar is sitting right now. And you'll be able to either add a stamp, you can add text if you want to put your initials beside, you can use the circle tool, and just indicate however you feel comfortable which animal most closely matches your learning style. So some of these might, sort of resonate with you right away. Our owl is for our visual learners. Our cat here represents our reading and writing learners. Oh, and we got a big scribble on the kangaroo for our kinesthetic learners. And then we have our auditory learners here, the sweet little basset hound. All right, I see some stamps and some squiggles and circles and arrows coming up already. Awesome. Great. Give folks just another minute. And if the annotate feature is maybe new to you, if you're having any trouble with it, feel free to just drop in the chat which one you connect most with for your learning style. All right, a lot of kinesthetic learners in the chat. We have some reading, writing learners, visual learners. Great. Awesome. Okay, wonderful. So great to hear from everybody. All right, so we will go ahead and move forward. Let me go ahead and clear and we will jump ahead. So like Monica said, we're really going to be focusing on microtraining and gamification. It's really exciting to hear that some of these topics might be new to you all, because we're really going to hone in on these two kind of overarching strategies while we talk about some of the different ways that we can support learners with the TCOM assessments and some of the real core areas that enable us to successfully complete these assessment tools. So just to really briefly get us on the same page definitions wise, when we say microtraining, we're talking about a really kind of a holistic field of practice and learning that focuses on delivering learning opportunities that are very skills focused for learners in small, really bite-sized chunks, so really small units of delivery. So that's what we mean when we say microtraining. We're looking at opportunities for learning that take ideally 10 minutes or less, even more ideally 5 minutes or less for a learner to complete and engage with. And then with gamification, just as it sounds, when we say gamification throughout our training today, we're really meaning we're taking those game design elements, we're taking gaming principles, and we're applying into the learning environment where they might not have always been before, but as a means for active skills practice, retention, and engagement for our learners. So we are focused really heavily on these two overarching strategies today because one, we know that they offer the opportunity to be really versatile and give you the means and access to techniques that appeal to lots of different learning styles. Like we all just shared, we're a mixed group, right? A lot of us learn in different ways. That's the same for our audiences as we train the TCOM assessments. So these two strategies not only offer that versatility for different learning styles, but they are also really applicable to this virtual environment that we find ourselves in, right? Before everyone got on the call, we were talking with Michelle about how, being in the virtual environment is really taxing. So we really need to make sure that we are being as efficient and as succinct as we can in delivering learning opportunities to our audience. So microtraining and gamification are really ripe to do just that. All right, so next we'll talk a little bit about our data. So, when we start talking about, across all of our systems, supporting our learners and understanding and using the TCOM assessments, we want to be able to figure out, what are some of the things that they're really struggling with in this really big kind of problem area, right? So for us in Allegheny County, we decided to, of course, first listen to our workforce. So we have heard for a long time anecdotally that there are some specific areas in the TCOM assessments, holistic assessments, that are challenging for our workforce to really talk with families about and talk with individuals about that they're serving. So one of those areas is race, and talking about race and other cultural considerations, and the other area is trauma. So we've heard that anecdotally from many of our staff and supervisors, and we do have some data to back it up. So I'm going to switch my screen over to our Common Assessments dashboard just to give you guys kind of a look at how we really were able to kind of hone in and figure out, okay, this is something we need to work on. These are areas that we need to start building specific kind of training materials for, and even especially now in the virtual environment. So let me see if I can get out of my large share here. Give me one moment and we'll get us back over to our dashboard. There we go. Okay, so in Allegheny County, I think, is it showing now? Can everyone see the dashboard? Awesome. So we have our Common Assessment Tool dashboard that has tremendous capability. It's a really amazing tool that some members of our team worked really diligent on over the last several years to make happen for us. There are a lot of different kind of functions, but for our purposes today, we really want to just highlight and showcase here this strengths and needs feature, which allows us to look really specifically at areas, item-specific areas for us. Sorry, hang on one sec. Item-specific areas that we're, concerned about and wanting to take a look at. So the way that we were able to say our supervisors and staff really know what they're talking about when they say race and trauma are issues are that we're looking at our item by item report and seeing, yes, there are so many of these areas where we're seeing Explore being used. For those of you that don't have the Explore feature in your jurisdictions, the Explore feature as it relates to the TCOM assessments is really just to provide that opportunity for staff to say, we don't know this information yet about this area. We're going to revisit it with the family as time goes on. So we're still learning about this. Unfortunately, we also know that for many of our staff, sometimes that Explore just gets used as a placeholder, right? They never even attempt to bring up the info with the family. So sometimes we see our Explore is being used inappropriately in those ways. So let me tab over to our life functioning domain. So as we look at these item by item domains, we can see a lot of our cultural considerations where we are considering challenges and needs around race. A lot of Explores here, as you can see with our legend, this kind of green shows us our Explores and our SOGI items as well. Oops, let me scroll back up. A lot of Explores there. So we have a lot of challenges in our jurisdiction talking about these areas. And then when we also talk about trauma and adjustment to trauma, let's scroll down to that, a good chunk of Explores there as well. So these are areas we can certainly see that, we need to do more work on our staff and supporting them and being able to have these really tough conversations with families. All right. Does that make sense for everybody? Any questions? Okay. All right. So let me hop back over to our slides and we will press on. All right, so I'm going to pass it back to Monica.
All right. So our task as trainers is really to ensure that our workforce not only understands the difference between screening and assessment and how crucial each one is to the service delivery process, but also understanding that it's more than just ratings and really to understand the importance of engagement within our assessments. And so we often focus on getting our learners to be reliable users of the assessment. And sometimes that takes away the focus from the importance of conversation and engagement as the foundation of these TCOM tools. So we apply the foundation to our conversation at hand, which is to really build skills for difficult conversations. And having the skills to dig deep and have difficult conversations is necessary to engage individuals and to collaborate and be able to improve situations for individuals. So as we reviewed in our data, the areas about race, cultural identities across the board, and trauma are among some of the most difficult for our staff to discuss with families. So as we focus our strategies around building cultural humility and trauma-informed engagement to address this. So when we say cultural humility, we're referring to the lifelong process of self-reflection and self-critique, whereby the individual is not only learning about another's culture, but starts to examine his or her own beliefs or cultural identities. And this process centers around self-awareness and self-reflection and acknowledges that our norms and our values and beliefs in American culture are centered on whiteness. And if whiteness is a center of our society, then people of color are on the margins. And so it's not enough just to think about our own values and beliefs within the context of the present moment. In order to practice true cultural humility, a person must also be aware of and sensitive to historical realities like legacies of violence and oppression against certain groups of people. So when we say trauma-informed engagement, we're referring to an approach in the human service field that assumes that an individual is more likely than not to have a history of trauma, and trauma-informed engagement recognizes the prevalence of trauma, the symptoms of trauma, and acknowledges the role that trauma may play in an individual's life. And further, we resist re-traumatization. So these three skills that support trauma-informed engagement are understanding the unique experience of trauma, considering the role of historical traumas, and lastly, being able to apply a trauma-informed lens of what has been your experience rather than what is wrong with you. And it's critical for our workforce to understand that trauma-informed engagement is not reserved for when we know an individual has experienced a trauma. However, we want to fully integrate trauma-informed principles into how we engage and how we collaborate. So I'm going to turn it over to Miranda to start to look at a little bit of how we can build these skills.
Awesome. Thanks, Monica. So yeah, how do we build these skills, especially in the virtual environment now that we're here? So the next little bit of our training is going to be just a very bit of review of some of the different specific techniques that you might use to implement the larger strategies of microlearning and gamification into your learning opportunities. So we'll really quickly go through those different techniques. As we go through them, I'll be kind of dropping in some, brand mentions of some of the different softwares that we use and have found success with. While I go through those, I'll also mention which of those offer free accounts for those of you that may, have some constraints with like your training department budgets. We're all familiar with that, especially now as many of our human service departments are facing deficits as a result of COVID. So we'll kind of burn really quickly through those different techniques. And then we're really going to get to the heart of our presentation, which is the demos. So Monica and I are going to be demoing 3 different tools and resources that we've developed for our team and our use in Allegheny County. And you all are going to be able to have access to them after this training on a Google site. So you'll be able to go in, play with them, complete the activities that we have for you, and just have those as a resource, for your own consideration and use, or as templates as you create your own materials. So we'll really kind of fly through some of this stuff quickly here so we can get to the juicy part, the demos. Sound good for everyone? All right, great. So for micro training, again, like we said, these are different techniques that really afford themselves well to micro training. They are elements that can be a nice quick bite, a small digestible piece of content or learning opportunity for folks. So the first are videos. We love videos on our team. So we make videos with a software called Beyond, which is a paid subscription service. So that one is a little bit on the higher price point. We do want to acknowledge, though, that Beyond does offer some nonprofit and governmental discounts for subscriptions. So something to consider there. We also enjoy and use Prezi videos, which are available in their free account. So two really great resources there to consider for creating videos. Second up here is webinars and recorded webinars. So of course, as you know, webinars have for a long time really been a popular way to develop and deliver materials. There may be different platforms that folks are using like Citrix and GoToMeeting. Zoom also offers a great webinar feature. We also encourage folks to take advantage of, in your Zoom account, if you have an account with a capability, a paid account with capability, you can record your trainings and meetings in Zoom and replay those as many times, as you need in the future. So being able to save and record, webinars and trainings is another great way to be able to deliver content virtually. Infographics are huge. This is another area our team really thrives in, I would say. Two of our software packages that we recommend for folks that are free are PictoChart and Canva. We have a paid account with PictoChart, which is handy in terms of PDF downloads and things like that. But PictoChart and Canva are they have excellent free accounts to really make beautiful, colorful, vibrant graphics for all of your needs. Not only can you make great infographics, you can also use their presentation templates, which are just outstanding. The presentation template you're actually looking at today is from Canva. So they offer a lot more than maybe some of the old, maybe kind of sometimes stale feeling templates that are available in Microsoft PowerPoint. So it can be a good way to kind of punch up your offerings in that way.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Hello. Are you speaking to us? No, okay. No worries.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me mute myself. I'm so sorry.
No.
It was a crisis phone. I had to answer it, but let me mute myself.
Oh yeah, no worries. Number 4 on our list, job aids. These have been around for a long time, but it's always bears repeating, especially for our folks that maybe part of your learning initiatives have to do with making sure a certain process or protocol is being followed. Having a step-by-step guiding document is so crucial for staff to be able to refer back to, and can be a great supplement to any other micro training opportunities. Podcasts are another great option that are gaining traction now. As we've talked about, being in the virtual environment so much is draining. So we need to figure out some other ways to deliver content to folks. Podcasts can be great, right? You can listen to them while you're walking. You can listen to them, while you're maybe accomplishing some other tasks. So that's a really growing area of interest for folks. The last one here for micro training, online learning modules. These are a big favorite for us, and we're going to be demoing a couple of our online learning modules that we use as a part of our FAST training, so the Family Advocacy Support Tool training, to show you all that you can kind of house in a module. So incorporating lots of different elements to appeal to lots of different learning styles. To deliver an online learning module, you have some options, right? Some organizations have an LMS that you might use to be able to house all of your information in. Our team uses a software called Qualtrics that's made available to us through Allegheny County DHS. Another great free option, couple of free options that are out there are things like SurveyMonkey, being able to really build well-crafted kind of surveys that you can incorporate videos into, incorporate different clickable content. SurveyMonkey is great, and Google is also great. So those are kind of by and large some great micro training techniques that you might want to consider as part of really honing your training for the digital learning environment. And yes, I see some questions about the different lists of tools. Yes, we can definitely, yes, and Monica says we can share all of those at the end. Got it. All right. And gamification is next. So these are by and large just some different strategies. Knowledge checks, always good to touch base with folks throughout training and post-training to make sure that they are understanding the material and retaining the material. So as you saw us use earlier in our training today, these first and second kind of go together really well in the virtual environment using those Zoom polls. If you're in Zoom, having those polls handy, having them crafted ahead of time is really a really great way to have that touch point with your audience on their learning and how they're connecting with the material. So those knowledge checks, again, within kind of the micro learning frame too, building questions, knowledge check questions into your surveys is another great way to get a read on how people are understanding. Polling, again, so not only Zoom polling, we also really recommend Poll Everywhere as a great free account that you can have access to create lots of really cool dynamic polls as well as competitive games. And Poll Everywhere is a favorite for us. A lot of folks also like the software, the online software Mentimeter as well. So there are really comparable offerings there. 3, another way to kind of gamify and add some creativity to your online presentations in Zoom using the annotation feature, as we did earlier in our training, is a great way to just allow people a little creative space to doodle, draw, connect with images on the screen. And the whiteboard can be another great way for people to do brain dumps, brainstorms, mind maps, all that good stuff. Our 4th here, simulation and role play. While a lot of folks might consider these to be really better suited to the in-person environment, they can still really be accomplished in the virtual environment as well. A lot of the great kind of features in Zoom, adjusting your speaker view, being able to pin certain speakers, it can be really conducive to that one-on-one or kind of a fishbowl kind of simulation exercise. So don't forget about those features as you're considering these. Scenarios, similar to simulation, we want to make sure that our workforce have the ability to walk through an experience and see what would happen based on different decision points as they're learning new material, and especially as they're learning and getting into those critical engagement skills that Monica mentioned earlier. One of the things we're going to review with you all is a trauma-informed engagement scenario game so that folks can get a little bit better of a feel for what might happen, you know, depending on how you react in a trauma-informed way or not with someone. Lastly, leaderboards and badges. As we mentioned with polling and Poll Everywhere, gamification obviously lends itself to a little bit of that competitive spirit. So anytime you can really encourage folks to maybe have a little competition with their colleagues, friendly competition, of course, or with themselves, that's always a great thing. And there are a lot of platforms out there that can offer some of that. The competitive game that's available to be customized in Poll Everywhere, including the free account, is great. It has an automatically updated leaderboard so you can see who's winning as you're playing and sort of foster that back and forth there a little bit and really get people, you know, psyched for the outcome, which is great. All right. Any questions on any of those overall kind of techniques for gamification or techniques for microlearning? Okay, awesome. Well, we are right on schedule, so we are going to get ready to transition into our demos. So I'm going to pass it over to Monica to take us through that trauma-informed scenarios game I was just discussing.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen to take you through a look of the trauma-informed engagement. Okay, let's see. Let me try share my computer sound. And find my mouse. Okay. All right, so as you can see, this simulation game we've created in the training arcade. And the training arcade is really great because it can allow you to create a lot of different types of games that your workforce can play on their own. So they can do self-paced learning or you can use them in a classroom type of setting as well. The great thing about the training arcade is it has its own analytics board so that you're able to see who's playing the games, how are they doing. So if you're limited and don't have a learning management system, you can use this as well to be able to track, those learning checks or just how people are doing within the game. This game is a part of our micro learning experience for trauma, our trauma informed care training. So after an in-person training, after midpoint checks, and after going through and watching different videos and playing other games, this is a way for users to really test their knowledge and put some of those skills into practice. So how we're going to do this today is we're going to play the games, and I'll launch some polls so that we're able to kind of collectively decide as a group how we're going to play. So this is just kind of setting up, giving the user a little bit of information of how the game will go, and we'll get started.
Hello. Welcome to the Allegheny County DHS Trauma-Informed Engagement Simulation. Through this simulation, you will have the opportunity to practice trauma-informed engagement by responding to 5 different scenarios from the perspective of a human service staff member. You're coming into work Monday morning, looking forward to meeting with your client. Before leaving the office, you've prepared for this meeting to make sure you engage the client effectively to build rapport. You wait at your desk, and after 20 minutes, it becomes clear that the client has no-showed for the appointment. This client missed their last appointment, and a second no-show makes your immediate feeling one of frustration and not being valued. Your agency has a policy that if a client has 3 no-shows in a row, their services are terminated, and you know that you will have to remind the client of this policy today.
All right, so based on that scenario, what option would you select? And we're going to kind of go as what the collective picks. So we have option 1, option 2, and option 3. On a disclaimer, it doesn't have to be the right one. All of these options will lead us down different pathways just to see how the individual reacts. So for the purpose of today, whatever the group picks is where we're going to go. All right, I see some coming in.
Oh, yes. And to read the options out, let me read the options out for some that are a little hard to see. The first option says you decide to contact the client during a time of day you know you'll get their answering machine. You leave a message. Hello, this is Human Services, Inc. I was disappointed that you missed our appointment today and hope that you can make it for the rescheduled appointment next Monday. Please let me know if you were able to make it to this session. So that's option 1. Option 2. Your time is too valuable for this, and it is disrespectful of you and your time to miss consecutive appointments. If this individual were motivated, they would show up, pick up the phone, and get straight to the point. Hello, I'm calling from Human Services, Inc., and I'm calling because you missed your second appointment today. Your rescheduled date is next Monday at 9 a.m. If you miss a third appointment, it is agency policy that your services will be terminated. Third option, so option 3, you check in with a coworker to get advice, and on their recommendation, you jot down a few open-ended questions to check in with the client about how to best meet their needs and to ensure that they make their next appointment. You contact the client and share, I notice it's been tough for you to make it in and wanted to check in and see if there's anything I can do to help support you in getting to our appointments. Our agency has a policy where if 3 sessions are missed, we have to terminate services, and I think that you and I will work really well as a team and want to make sure we don't get to that point.
All right. So it looks like the majority say option 3. So we're going to hit this one and see.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to get there in the mornings. I would prefer an evening appointment.
All right, so how would you respond? Option 1 is I can work as late as 6 p.m. Is there a time that works best for you? Option 2 is I'm sorry, but I don't work in the evenings. And then option 3 is we typically don't do evening hours. Could a late afternoon work? All right. So it looks like we're going with option 1.
Okay, I guess we can do Monday at 4.
All right. Then we see Monday at 4, and it looks like the client was able to attend.
Feeling physically, socially, or emotionally unsafe may cause extreme anxiety in a person who has experienced trauma, potentially causing re-traumatization. Therefore, as a trauma-informed professional, it's fundamental to create a safe environment in order to effectively engage individuals. Examples of creating a safe environment that could be incorporated in this scenario are: ensure staff maintain healthy interpersonal boundaries and can manage conflict appropriately. Offer sufficient notice and preparation when changes are necessary. Maintain communication that is consistent, open, respectful, and compassionate. Consider that there may be barriers to accessing services.
All right, so we're going to take a look at another scenario.
Someone walks into the building for the food bank. This doesn't appear to be a client that you have ever served at your agency, and it is not walk-in food bank hours. You check the appointment book, and they do not have an appointment. Office policy is to ask them to fill out an intake form if they are a new client in need of food or services, but they do not want to fill this form out because they just came for food and don't have much time.
All right, so we have 3 options again. The first one is you tell them that I understand that you're frustrated and you'd like some resources from the food pantry, and I'd be happy to help you, but you're short on time. Maybe I can just ask you a few questions and fill out the form for you. All I really need to know today is just your name, address, how many people are in your household, their ages and diet of the family members so that I can meet your unique needs of the family. Option 2 is this feels disrespectful and this person needs to follow the same rules that everyone else does. You tell them without filling out the intake form, I cannot give you any food. Option 3 is you are short on time and energy, but you also don't want this person to go hungry. You tell them if you aren't willing to fill out this form, you can grab a few items of emergency food from this cart. However, you can only have 5 things. So what do you think? Option A, option B, or option C? All right, looks like option 1 is what the majority of everyone picked. Let's see what happens.
As the client begins to share information, you notice their tone and body language change, and you're able to complete the intake paperwork and get them some food for their family. They are also willing to set up monthly appointments to continue receiving services. Feeling frustrated and unheard can cause individuals to react with protective barriers or defense mechanisms. Such responses can be useful in some situations and problematic in others. As a trauma-informed professional, we can respond to feelings of frustration and not being heard by showing empathy and validating feelings. This creates a safe space where individuals can connect and engage. Examples of showing empathy that could be incorporated in this scenario are actively listening and acknowledging what you've heard. Communicate that you recognize the individual's emotions and feelings. Avoid judgment and consider the situation from the client's perspective. Remember that everyone's situation is unique, so treat everyone as an individual.
All right. And let's do one more scenario. However, this time, when we're weighing in, maybe we pick the least trauma-informed option just to see how the user would experience it if they kind of weren't doing so well.
You are working with a client and one of their main priorities is budgeting. The past several sessions, you have shared several strategies for budgeting money for the month. Today, when you meet with your client, they tell you that their Social Security deposit was deposited on Friday, 3 days ago, and they have already spent the entirety of their check.
All right. So for this scenario, option one is you thank them for sharing. We've been working together to try to prioritize budgeting. So I could imagine that things feel particularly stressful right now. Could we talk about what expenses you've had already that ate up your check? Maybe we can find some resources that can help. In the meantime, let's look at the bills and expenses that you have due this month and what other income you have coming in, and draft a plan for how we can get through those and meet the rest of the month. Option two is, what do you mean you spent your entire check? We spoke last week about the need to budget and you haven't even paid rent yet. Option three is, wow, okay. Are you okay talking through what you spent your money on to see if there are any other ways we could increase your income right now to get you through? We could also potentially explore other expenses that we could work to cut down. All right. So we have selected option two, and let's see what this does. So as you can see, that's not what we were hoping as the most trauma-informed option. So it just lights up as red. But if you see throughout the game, we continue to earn points. And so even though an option may not be what you hoped as the ideal one, you can also change the points that each person gets. So maybe if I picked a medium of the road, I'll get some points, but not the full points that I would get if I selected the right one.
I picked up my prescriptions, groceries, and formula, and my check is all gone. I'm doing my best, and this is not helpful.
So we see that the client just left.
Implementing a trauma-informed approach to care can allow clients to engage more fully, thereby providing a pathway to better outcomes. A trauma-informed approach shifts the focus from "what's wrong with you?" or "why did you spend all your money?" to "what have you experienced?" or "let's talk about what's going on and how we can move forward." This shift can be accomplished by realizing the widespread impact of trauma and understanding potential paths for recovery, recognizing the signs and symptoms of trauma in individual clients, families, and staff, integrating knowledge about trauma into policies, procedures, and practices, and seeking to actively resist re-traumatization.
All right, so thank you all for playing along with us. I'm going to hand it back over to Miranda, who's going to take us through another example of something that you can use with your workforce.
Thank you. All right, so I am going to share the Google site you all are going to have access to later today, and we'll access those resources together here. So let me tab over. So here you'll see, just really quickly, you'll see we have some of our materials broken up as just assessment specific materials. So things that are specific to CANS, ANZA, and FAST. So an intro video. We have here that you can watch a video that we made specifically about how to document traumatic experiences in our common assessments here. And then down below, we have our FAST modules. So one of the ways that we've adapted to the kind of COVID world is shifting away from our previous in-person full-day certification training for new FAST users and really moving more towards a hybrid model, I think like a lot of folks are. So now we have a half-day virtual kind of live training, like this, where we're presenting live to a group of new users. And then following training, we have 3 post-training modules that all of our staff are required to complete, in addition to their certification test through the Parade website. So we have these 3 modules that we built in Qualtrics for folks to have some really topic-specific follow-up and expansion for their learning on the FAST and all the necessary components of the FAST. So I'll briefly just show you what is contained in our FAST modules 2 and 3. So just to give you an idea. Like we said, we use Qualtrics to put together our learning modules. We found that it's a little easier for not only our internal staff, but some of our external provider staff to be able to access something like this versus in our like in-house larger LMS system. So we use Qualtrics to deliver these materials. So here you can see we set it up so that there's some instructions and tips at the top. We have folks enter their name, and then we have some embedded content here. So something that's great about Qualtrics as well as SurveyMonkey is that possibility to embed your materials directly into the deliverable. So that way folks don't have to navigate out of the screen if they don't want to. They can play the video directly within screen. So we have our trauma-informed engagement video here, popped right in for folks to view. And we have another game similar to the scenarios game, a little different, that folks can, again, just enter and start playing right in screen here. So we have these modules set up this way so they can really complete everything. Everything they need is at their fingertips. They have some documents that they can pull up and reference as they work through these materials. And for this topical content, rather than knowledge checks that we had mentioned before, we really encourage some reflection from our staff here. So we incorporate right into the survey just some basic reflection questions. Why is trauma-informed engagement important to the work you do? Think about a difficult engagement with an individual in the past. What's one technique from the video that could have changed the outcome of that engagement? So really giving them that time to think about what's the importance or relevance of this topic for me, and what could be different in the future if I take this material and apply it to past situations and hopefully current situations too. So that's one of our modules for that specifically trauma-informed engagement. The third module is more kind of a broad engagement module. So again, we have our space with some instructions and entering the name. Here we have an example of a Prezi video that, like I said, you guys are going to get access to all of this, so you can watch through all of these. Some of these videos are a little longer, so we're not going to play them for you in training. But again, you can embed videos directly into your learning module. That way folks can watch it directly there. And again, having folks reference back to other materials and reflect, what can they make use of here? So what was a strategy or tip from that resource that, is really helpful for them to kind of consider? So we have, these are just a couple of examples of how we build those online learning modules. We also have here on this page, this picture, if you click it, will open up a shared OneDrive file for you. And it is going to have 3 core folders that are labeled modules 1, 2, and 3. And these are all the supporting documents that go along with those modules. So you'll have access to those and be able to review, what are the documents that, the workers would be referencing as they work through these. And then we also have this little bonus folder for you guys here, this additional resources folder. This is going to be a space for you to see just some of our other materials that we've developed. Some of these are infographics that we've created either through Canva or PictoChart. So there's some good examples of these. I'll bring this one up for you to see there. So a nice kind of clean and colorful 6 key principles infographic that can be helpful for training. And then let's go back to. We also, too, I wanted to call out the scenarios game that Monica just reviewed with us for the trauma-informed engagement piece. It's amazing. I noted in the chat, the Training Arcade is the software that we're using to create those games. There are possibilities to create kind of other similar kind of approximations of that game using PowerPoint and Zoom polls. So we included one thing that we did is we have a game version in our site here of fast mini stories to practice. And this game, again, just in the interest of time, since we have just under 10 minutes left, in this game, there are little stories about different families. And this takes the user through a process of first reading the story, identifying what fast items are relevant from that story and that could be rated, and then taking them on to that next level to then rate those items based on the evidence portrayed in the story. So we built this as a game very similar to what Monica just showed with the trauma-informed engagement scenarios, but you are able to do this through Zoom as well. So we encourage folks to kind of think big and think creative. Our contact info is going to be on the last slide. We're always happy to, hear from folks if you have questions or want to kind of consult on any of this stuff. But here are these slides that we use to build that game for identifying fast items and then bringing it to that next level for rating practice. So you'll be able to you can have these slides up, and then you can build Zoom polls off of these slides to help people narrow down from a list of items, having them select, multiple items that they think is relevant from that story, and then having a rating scale poll to then choose the most appropriate rating for that item as you move through. So just wanted to call out, these are just some bonus resources for you there as well, touching on not only micro-learning, but gamification and infographics, all that good stuff. All right. So those are kind of the core materials with assessment related, kind of a topical focus. And then down below, we have our cultural humility materials as well. And I'm going to pass it over to Monica to review our module for race and the criminal legal system. Oh, you're muted.
All right. So this is another example of a module that we have used. So if your agency doesn't have Qualtrics, you can also use Google Sites and Google Forms in order to make these different modules. So this is one that we use just to engage some people on our team around having conversations about race. So this module is just looking specifically at race in our criminal justice system. And as you can see, it's built out to have a couple of videos that the user will take a look at and watch, as well as some articles that the user will read, and then some different websites that they're asked to explore. And then after that, there are these short reflection questions to really think about the materials and as it relates to their individual region, the different work that people do as well. And then you can see down here, this is what the Google form looks like. So similar to that Qualtrics, you can have the users write in their reflections in here. So you can really change this to anything that you would want it to be about. And then you have the ability, once the user submits that, you can see different responses and see what people are sharing. So again, this is all on our the Google page that we'll be giving you all to see, and you can access that right here on this button. It'll take you directly to that page to be able just to kind of see how that's laid out. So I think we have about 5 more minutes. Are there any questions? Anything that people would like more information on? Like Miranda mentioned that we will be giving you the list of all of the softwares that we mentioned. They're at the very bottom of that Google page. You can see them listed out, and they kind of share just a little bit of what you can do with them as well.
Yeah, I just jotted down all of our softwares. So I'm going to try to drop that into the chat really quickly as a file attachment. So I just shared that. I hope that works for folks. We can also sort of tack that into that site as well, if that maybe is helpful for folks too. But yeah, let me share our contact info here on our slide. But yeah, before we wrap up, I think we have like one more little poll that we can launch. I know we've gone through so much information in such a short span of time. And I see a few comments in the chat, being excited about the gamification and stuff. So that's awesome. We'd love to hear from you all. Yeah, what you're most interested in trying as a result of this training. All right, awesome. And I see some folks in the chat, they're planning to really beef up a virtual training. Carissa, that's awesome. So exciting to hear. Oh, so wish you could select more than one. I agree. So scenarios and games sound popular for folks. Yes, Carol will post the link to the website, the Google site here in just a minute. Ooh, Steve has a great question about CEUs, and that's a really good question and not one that we actually do in Allegheny County. So with our trainings, they are really for like internal and provider staff as part of like a required certification process in order to, A, be eligible for employment, and B, maintain contracts with, with the county to provide services that they do. So our trainings do not count for CEUs. They're typically just part of like a required certification for the job. If we do run into anyone that does know more about that, or if anyone in this Zoom call right now knows about offering CEUs for virtual trainings and could reach out to Steve, that would be awesome. But I apologize, Steve, we don't have a lot of knowledge in that area. All right, Bree picked whiteboard and annotation. Nice, yeah, scenarios and videos, awesome. Great. Well, I'm really excited for you all, and I'm really grateful for spending a little bit of your afternoon with us. I see Monica put the Google site link in the chat, so please feel free to click on that now, bookmark it, save it, whatever you need to do, and grab that document file that I popped in there too. Please feel free to reach out to us with questions or comments. Yeah, we've loved being with you this afternoon.